Welcome back to the Overdrive Show here on Vision Radio 105.1 FM. Today we have Welby O'Brien on our show, and what an honor! So many questions I have from the different things that have uh, have been written and done, and especially the kind of outlets that you have been able to minister to. So thank you, Welby, for being on our show. Welcome.
So thank you, Ginger.
This is a very hits on more than one topic for me personally. Um, so you've wrote your so is your first book called Formerly a Wife? Is that correct?
Yeah, formerly a wife.
And so what kind of led up to you writing that book? I mean, it sounds like a book that could fit very many circumstances, but for you, what was that?
Well, for me personally, my husband and I have been married for 12 years, and he was in the ministry, and we had a 3-year-old little boy. And one day he just came to me and said, "Welby, I don't want to be married anymore." And 2 weeks later, he was off with someone else. So basically, my world came crashing in, and at that time, there was no one in my life who had been through divorce, and there were very few books available, and none for women in particular. So I'm thankful that I knew the Lord. I had a good counselor, many prayer warriors, and I did keep a journal of my feelings, my failures, my victories, growth, and things I learned along the way. And so the book, Formerly a Wife, is just a result of me wanting to share with others what I had learned to just encourage them on their road to healing.
And I myself am from a broken marriage, both my parents and myself. And one thing that I discovered, and mine was only about 15 years ago, and I think, you know, I felt like we were living in modern times, but when I went for help, it felt like the Stone Age, like
Yeah.
because I was like, where is the help? I mean, not only just in general to the public, but especially in my church. I'm like, where is the ministry for people? I mean, they had divorce care, but if you're a single mom, um, you don't want to be mixed in like a group settings necessarily sometimes like that. And it fits. And now it was wonderful later for me. I did go through it. It was wonderful. But like for that time, I need something to help me individually so I could lead my family because I had no idea what to do, and my mom's circumstances weren't my own, and thankfully she led me to knowing the Lord and growing up, and I had that foundation, and a strong single godly woman, mom presence, but it definitely like you know it just shook my world. It just I like as you know, it just turned it upside down. And um I think one of
It
the
wasn't your life plan. That didn't wasn't your happily ever after.
no, you don't plan on it. You don't get married planning
No.
on divorce. Now, for you, did your view of like looking at people who are going, because I think sometimes they would rather you be a leper than to be a divorced person coming into a church. Like it's almost more frowned upon than if you were bringing the black plague in with you, or you know what I mean? I mean, so there is a stigma attached to people in general that are divorced. But did your view change on that once you had to go through it personally?
Oh, definitely. I always, sort of thought, well, everybody can make the marriage work if you just try hard enough, right? And
Of course, yeah.
so, yeah, and so I found out the hard way that that's not always possible, and I was very humbled through all of this. There is a lot of shame that you feel, whether it's intentional on the part of others or not. And like you mentioned earlier, you just, where do I fit in? Because you don't feel ready at all to be called a single and join
Right.
that group. Not yet, anyway. And so all of that is true. And I just think one of the things that I learned is that God's grace is big enough for everyone, even those who are in any way responsible for the breakup. So we as believers and whoever we are, to reach out to people who are hurting, whatever the circumstance is, without judging, because we all need the Lord and we all need love and we all need encouragement.
And I heard it described one time at a conference I went to as, um, because a marriage is a, joining of one flesh. People sometimes think of divorce as just this clean slice down the middle, like a surgical thing, but really it's the ripping of
Yes,
flesh, which means some fibers of you are still going to stay on them and vice versa. It is not a clean surgical method. It is a ripping, and
yeah.
that
And
was
I
one of
think
the
that's
best
part of the
ways.
lie is people think that it's going to solve problems. It actually
It creates them.
creates more problems,
Yeah,
especially if there's children involved.
yeah, either way, it's there's no such thing as a easy divorce or a peaceful one. I mean, it may be civil, but nobody really wants it, no matter if you're the one asking for the divorce. They went, especially in hindsight. And you so I love that you began the book with a checklist for survival. I think everybody at the beginning is, to kind of, I always say, if you've had a relationship of any kind go wrong, you need to do an autopsy, you know, and literally go full CSI on it and find out where the things were good, a heart that was healthy, but there was some problems in this area of the body of that marriage or this one, because some of it's on you, some of it isn't, but you can learn either way. And so what, like, that was kind of the cool thing that you begin. So, like, what was some of the things that you thought were kind of that checklist?
Well, I actually wish that somebody had given me this checklist for survival before I had to kind of crash and burn. And the wonderful thing about it is I've got it in all three books adapted because it's been so helpful for anybody going through any kind of a crisis or just daily stress. But some of the things that were really helpful for me was just realizing I have to just survive right now and take care of me. That self care is so far off our radar sometimes. We're just trying to survive or get through a mess. But just basic things like pour out your heart to God, saturate yourself with Scripture, remember to fill our body with healthy things, feeling the pain in a healthy way, and not covering it up with something that just feels good at the moment, like eating or Amazon or
Yeah, that would be mine
let
right
yourself
there.
cry. Make sleep a priority, and some of those things are just really, really practical things to help us in any time of crisis.
I love your phrase, feel, deal, and heal.
Mm.
And so, can you explain that? I love that phrase.
Yeah, feel, deal, and heal is basically that we are not responsible for feelings that come uninvited,
Yeah.
but we are responsible for how we handle them. So, learning to name it, own it, and work it through. Everybody has things that work better for themselves. So find what is that healthy outlet that works for you. Crying, journaling, talking with a friend, exercising. I found that yard work and pruning bushes was really therapeutic. Unfortunately, the neighbors could always drive by and find out how I'm doing by looking at the yard.
So if they're down to a stump, it's not a good week to go
There was
say,
some stumps
don't
down there
bring
for a
don't
while.
bring any cookies to her house that day.
Yeah, that would be the one. So anyway, so feel, heal, and then the healing can begin. But if we try to run from our pain or bury it or deny it, it's only going to actually make it worse and fester and explode down the road at some point.
And then I love, you wrote a book, which we have Veterans Day upon us, and you wrote a book, Love Our Vets,
Mm-hmm.
and about PTSD, um, and then of course Goodbye for Now. And you know what? I there's such a common thread throughout all of them, and um, it's the need for the healing that comes only in one real way. There's some things that contribute to us feeling better, but the real healing and the real hope, comes from God. PTSD is very like divorce. It's very close to my heart. My cousin committed suicide about 3 years ago, and it was many, many years after he left the military. But he was in Guam, and some locals attacked him and hit him over the head with an object that affected him permanently, and like so he couldn't be around the public a lot, and he was he just he could not handle a lot of stimuli, and his the mother of his kids decided to, I don't know if it was real or not, but she said she was leaving with his only little boy, who was only 4 almost at that age, and he shot himself in front of her and her little boy. So the little boy still unfortunately remembers it. And but that someone who can't handle stimuli, people are like, why did he literally walked in the house with her packing up that little boy's things, and he grabbed a gun, and that was it. And but he told her if she ever left him, that'll be the last days on earth. Like, he could never handle that child being taken away from him. And they really had like a inconsequential fight. It was not a massive fight. No one was cheating. Nothing. It was just one of those, like, I'm gonna leave. I mean, wasn't even really truly meant. And but he couldn't handle it. I mean, the PTSD for him was so severe, and literally it was such a travesty, because he was such a warm and sweet person. If it was a small group of family, he was easily handled. But he could walk into a Walmart and have to walk right back out and go to the car just because somebody brushed against him. And so the Love Our Vets book, I want to know, like, so how is this something that became a close thing to your heart, and wrote this book on PTSD and our veterans?
Well, first, my heart goes out to you and the death of your cousin and the impact that on his wife and child. I just pray that they will get the help and the support that they need. That's just, unfortunately, way too common.
Yeah.
But for me, I eventually, after 20 years of being a single mom and being on my own, met a man who is a Vietnam veteran. And he told me from the get-go, he said, Welby, I've got PTSD and I'm all messed up. And I didn't know what that was. And the farther along we got, the more I realized this is an exceptional man, like you said about your cousin, a good heart, and a relationship worth fighting for. But I needed to know about PTSD. I needed to find out, is it possible to have a loving and fulfilling relationship in spite of the PTSD?
Oh, yeah.
And so I did. I got read everything I could get my hands on, which wasn't much at all at the time. Signed up for a class at the VA and just was overwhelmed with the horrors that our warriors have gone through that haunt them day and night. And I've also learned that PTSD can happen to anyone. There's probably more people with PTSD that are not even in the military community that have had it from abuse or just shocking, horrific events. And I had to learn that it isn't me, that I can't fix it, and how to take care of me. So we prayed a lot. We got a lot of counseling. And I can tell you now, years later, that yes, it's possible to have a loving, fulfilling relationship, but it does have its challenges. So the book, Love Our Vets, was a result of me sharing the things that I had personally learned in my own counseling, things that I had to learn, work through, And also, I have started a national online support, Love Our Vets PTSD Family Support, and some local groups. So we've been meeting with a group of ladies here locally for 12 years now. And so it's a combination of all the things that I've learned and that I've learned from others who have been at it longer than I have. How do we reach out, support our loved ones who battle PTSD, and also take care of ourselves at the same time?
Yeah, and when you were saying, you touched on something when you said, it's not just people in the military. My divorce happened because I was in an incredibly abusive marriage where I was being economically, physically, emotionally, in every sense of the word, being abused. And sadly, he was in a place of service in my church, and our pastor would
Mm.
not take him out of service, even
Oh.
even knowing he was physically, especially abusing me on a regular basis. Sometimes on the way to
Mm.
church,
Mm.
um, and of course in front of my children. And one thing I learned in counseling afterwards was they told me that children and people, women or whoever has suffered at the hands of abuse, are 8 to 10 times more affected in a PTSD type situation than a military person in war, because
Mm.
that war is it's not like there's an end. It's not like you signed up for 4 years or the war might end. Your war
Yeah.
is every day. You live inside the war zone on a daily basis, and you know war is going to happen, and you never know when the explosive devices are going to go off and where. And it's
Uh-huh.
just constantly, you know, uh, minesweeping. You're just constantly dodging those things.
Mm-hmm.
And now your website is loveourvets.org. So is that so? They can get your book and get some advice on how to handle PTSD and everything from that.
Absolutely. Loveourvets.org. And we have been told we've had one of the biggest resource lists of all the websites. And so there's a lot there for people with PTSD and people who love them. And it's really good for people who are not familiar with it to learn more about it so we can be aware maybe if somebody we love is starting to manifest some of the symptoms, or
Right.
how to welcome and love and reach out to those who are struggling with it and not be afraid of them.
Yeah, exactly. And then, I feel like there's so much to cover in talking to you because you also wrote, and these are all being re-released, your book, Goodbye for Now.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like you're covering a trifecta of recovery issues that I think so many people, somebody, like people who have PTSD or divorce. I mean, the odds are like 1 out of 4 probably that someone, or you're sitting next to someone on the church pew on Sunday, or that you are encountering
Mm-hmm.
someone going through these issues. But especially the Goodbye for Now, when it has to come to losing a loved one.
Mm-hmm.
And so, what was it then, your particular life, that led to this book?
This book I wrote after my father died. And at the time, my mom and I just kind of stumbled around. We had no idea what to do or how. And when you lose a loved one, even when you are expecting it, you're just totally overwhelmed, not only emotionally with all the grieving and the sneaker waves of emotions, but with all the things that have to be done.
It's like you can
So,
only expect, the only thing you expect about it is that the heartbeat stops. That's the only part you
yeah,
expect. You don't expect all of the
yeah,
stuff that happens afterwards.
yeah. And so we just basically muddled through. And after things calmed down, I realized there is a desperate need for a guide to
Yeah.
help people right off the bat. And actually, Goodbye for Now is best if people can have it ahead of time. You can prepare for your own, get your own stuff in order, and know what kind of checklist things to get in order if your loved one is maybe terminally ill. But so it's a real helpful guide. It's got a section of just absolute checklists where when you can't think, you just start right off the bat. This is the first thing I do, and the second thing, and then there's a section on self-care, and then it ends with a whole lot of just really encouraging, comforting scripture verses, which are uplifting to those who have strong faith, and also a real encouragement to those who maybe aren't quite sure where they are on their relationship with the Lord. So it's a very practical and encouraging book for all of us.
I like one of the things that I was looking through your press information. One of the things that says people most struggle with is how do I respond to people's comments politely and without falling apart. I'm sure that people say, "How are you doing?" immediately is what I have experienced in the past. Is how are you holding up or something like that. Have you come upon like some way of like asking, or responding to someone's comments like that without, falling apart? Do you prepare yourself for something like that?
Yeah, well, first off, I would just say don't be afraid to cry, and um, never apologize for it. In fact, we need to cry. It's good. The tears are just a normal part of the process, and it just shows how much your loved one meant to you and that you're going to miss them. So falling apart or losing it, as they say, is not a sign of weakness or lack of faith. And I'm just thinking something that helped me was when they ask, "How are you doing?" Just have a couple phrases just ready so it doesn't drain you, but something like, "A little better today, thank you," or "We always appreciate your prayers," or "Thank you for caring." Just something simple that doesn't require you pouring out more energy to respond to people. And it's just can be very simple like that.
And that's something, you're saying kind of about expending yourself in that way, the emotional devastation. I think people do plan on being emotionally devastated, but physically you become devastated, and spiritually it can throw you off. So I know you have, suggestions that, you have in the book for taking care of yourself, because that's, especially if you have children or someone else you're still caring for, or a spouse. I mean, you've got to go on, and you have to be able to, maybe go back to work or things like that. I mean, but you have to be, people don't think about, you have to be physically taking care of yourself. Did you notice that eventually, that how that drains you in ways like that?
Oh, absolutely. And, once again, I call it the survival checklist, but it starts with staying tuned to what you need and not putting yourself at the bottom of the list because there's so much that has to be done, or trying to keep people happy or whatever. You'll take care of your dental and medical appointments eventually, or you'll get sleep eventually, or you forgot to eat, or all those things, and then you'll really crash. So tuning into what do I need, and it's okay and it's necessary for me to tune into my feelings and process them, and to take a little time out and turn off the phone and the internet and hide out for a while if you need to, or whatever it is. It's going to take time, and you've got to realize that it's not only not selfish to take care of yourself, it's very essential.
Yeah, because and that all of those things become interdependent, the physical, the spiritual, emotional, like they all, you know, you can't properly tune in. You can't do a Bible study when you can't hardly keep your eyes open, or I mean, you haven't
Right.
eaten and you feel horrible. You can't fully grasp what you need to, and if you have children, I mean, yeah, or if you have a spouse, I mean, it's your obligation to be there for them. If you have a job, I mean, the world's going to continue. I think the saddest part about someone passing is about 2 weeks after the funeral. because that's about
Yes.
the time it seems to take for everybody to go back on with their lives and almost forget that you suffered a big loss. But for you, that void is still very much present. And I know that one of the things you talk about is like, financial and other documents, that loved ones need to be able to access. So, I mean, I think another thing is, like you were talking about preparing yourself for someone with PTSD, but like in that book, I think people don't realize how much they need to plan. And I think they don't realize it until they have lost someone, how much they need to plan for those things, right?
Absolutely. And everybody intends to do that or say, well, maybe I'll do that when I get old or get sick.
Right.
But, this is probably one of the biggest mistakes people make, whether you're young or old. We had a young father just died suddenly not too long ago, left a wife and kids. And so it can happen to anyone just without warning. So I have a checklist in the book of things to get together, things to think about, things to put your information in one place, questions to think about, to talk with your family, decisions to make in advance. And it really, really helps because it's so hard picking up the pieces as it is, let alone if the person who's passed on didn't leave things available, organized. You've got to break into their computer and you don't have the password, you don't
Right.
know the bank account, you don't know where are the real estate information, where's the health insurance information, is the will or living trust up to date, and all those things to think about that are honestly no fun to think about in advance, but important. And to put it all in one place and let your loved ones know where the information is. And um, somebody even told me that they did that recently, and they put a copy of the book Goodbye for Now with the folder so that the loved ones
Oh.
could actually have that. I know that was so cool.
Oh,
But
that makes me want to cry. That's so beautiful.
yeah. So
I'm
my personal website is wellbyo.com, and that will give you information about all three books and more information on some of these things that you might want to gather together in advance. And so I would encourage people to go there if and when they have time.
And so it's welbo.com. And you can access, I mean,
WELBYO.
LB. Okay, WEL. It's like Welby, the name.
Uh-huh.
Welby O, like O'Brien.
Yeah.
Welbo.com. Sorry. All together. And you have information on all three books there and your resources. And I thank you for the interview because you hit on three huge subjects with these three books. And we could talk all day and still never hit all the questions I want to ask. But the great thing is you wrote books, so we can find the answers, what your answers are to a lot of those things by reading these books and just giving people a way to. Because I will tell you this, when I left my husband, who, like I said, who had been abusing me. I mean, my body was in shams, and like
Mm-hmm.
my emotional state, I was just a shell. And the one of the first things that someone, when they found out, somebody in my Sunday school class handed me The Power of the Praying Wife. And
Mm.
and that Stormy O. Martin, love her, she's a great author. But I honestly, my first thought was I wanted to throw the book across the room because this was somebody who never loved on me, didn't know me, but she told me if I prayed enough, he would, my husband, soon to be ex, would be, he would, you know, get right anything he didn't have right. And it was up to me to pray for him to be better. I mean, I obviously was praying for him to be better. We still had kids, but basically it was like if I would have just read this book and been a better praying wife, I wouldn't get knocked around. And I thought,
Mm.
we have to love people before, we can do that. And if you don't know how to help people, you can read books like this. If you know somebody that is an ex-military or somebody who's been abused, the your Love Our Vets book. I mean, it's a book that they can use as a resource to say. wow, this is what they're going through, and people who are loved ones of them. Um, so you can at least have information, or somebody who's been divorced and you don't know how to handle it because you don't know where they're coming from, and you can start loving on them in a better way by knowing where they're coming from. And someone like, I have lost a lot of people in my life that I love, but I have not lost a child. I've not lost a parent. I mean, a lot of the massive close to me losses I haven't had, and I've lost a lot of people I love, that older people, people I love but didn't know as well or something. But I haven't had one of those that levels me, and I know it's coming. My mom's getting up there, and but you know, I know that that's the first thing I'm going to want to do is, where's that book? you know, because and I think it's great, like you were saying, like, before these things wreck your life, or if they're wrecking someone's life near you, sometimes the best thing you can do is, hey, let's read this together. Say, I have no idea what you're going through, but maybe if we could sit down and read this together, I'll help you figure it out. I mean, if
That's
someone
great.
if someone's going
Yeah.
through that, I think, you know, it really is like a shock and awe when you lose somebody, or the PTSD, and you don't know how to deal with someone who's dealt with that, or someone, if you go through a divorce. Um, there are so many people who, like you were saying with divorce. I mean, I think just like abuse, I think there's shame, there's blame, so much we put on ourselves. Some of it we deserve, like some of it we got to own. I don't say deserve, but we have to own there are issues that we can change about ourselves, but then God does not want us to dwell there. He wants to own it, ask forgiveness where necessary, and heal, like you're saying, and move on from that, because um, as long as we have a pulse, we have a purpose, and we we have, in order to go ahead and fulfill whatever He has for us, we have to take care of ourselves, in all of those different ways. And you hit on some of the most major things that people deal with, and I'm a huge book fan, so I cannot wait to read all of these, because I promise you they all three apply, and I am going to read them all. And especially for Veterans Day, you don't have to know a vet, know anybody who's experienced a trauma, that I guarantee you it's somebody in your pew at church, it's somebody at your workplace. Somebody going through that. And if you read those in advance, then when you notice the signs, or that they go through it, you're going to know how to love on them and be that person they can come to, that's going to say, I'm not in your shoes, but I read resources and enough to know I can be there for you, and I'm at least prepared, and you can never be prepared for everything, but these are great resources, and I think for some people, all three apply. I think many places you'll find, all three books will apply to somebody, and
Well, I appreciate that, and I think people just bottom line really need to know that they're not alone
yes,
when they're going through something. They don't need to know that you know it fully, but just knowing that you care means so much, and to know that there's hope. And that's what I think all three books are saying. Life is full of hard times, but we have hope, and that's the message I want people to get.
and it's okay not to be okay.
Yeah,
We're not always
good thing,
okay.
huh?
Yeah, and we have a need for the Savior. Sometimes I think at Christmas, everybody's so excited about the birth. I think, why don't we think about the things that came from that? Like, He was a healer. He brought hope. Like, because all those things, the Christmas time, sadly, is where you get the most depression, suicide, divorce, all these things. Like, the holidays they wreak havoc for people. And I know Veterans Day is not necessarily celebrated by all veterans. Those with PTSD, I do know people that it's a reminder that stabs them, because it reminds them all over again. I went through this, and so it can be a good reminder, it can be sometimes a bad reminder. And so I think having these resources is just, especially, start a Bible study, or if you have a Bible study, introduce one of these books. And because there's somebody in your Bible study that needs one of these, I guarantee you. And if not, then they're going to, because they're going to have a loved one or somebody they know experience that. And I think to be prepared, as a church body, we need to be more. More geared up for the things that are going to hit people and to hit ourselves as well. And I'm just thankful for you to take the time to do the interview. And I'm just so blessed that you are. I'm glad you re-released these books, and I'm glad that all these things are available for people as resources, because I know what it's like to be lost and to not know where to start. And I wish I had these back then, but I'm so glad they're here now, because I haven't, like I said, I haven't experienced that large loss, but I've experienced loss, and I definitely want to be prepared for those things. And I think that's a great thing, is to, if you haven't been through one of those things or know someone, is to read it in preparation for being there for someone. And thank you so much. I appreciate you so much. And especially around Veterans Day, the love our vets. We have to do that anyway, just out of respect and out of honor for their sacrifice, but also to help those around us. And maybe gift, go to a local vet organization, and if you don't know how to spend your time or your money, buy a set of these and gift them to, a local vet, organization of some kind, or go to the vet hospital and ask them if they have study groups that would be interested. And I think people lose a sight on how many people would love to have your money spent on things like that. Maybe at Christmas time, maybe gift things like, books on loss or on divorce and things like that. We have to be better as a church to, be able to deal with the large issues that are at hand. And I'm glad that you are one of the people out there putting information out there to help.
Well, it's a joy to do so, and I appreciate you too, Ginger, and the ability to be able to share with your listeners.
Well, we appreciate you, and we'll share this with your social media so everybody can hear your heart behind your books. And definitely share it with our listeners, obviously, to continue to keep your information out there about your books. And you have Facebook presence as well for your books, correct?
Yes, we've got over 40,000 on our Love Our Vets PTSD family support, and you can connect with that on the loveourvets.org site, and you can connect with all of this on the www.welbo.com website. That's got everything on it.
Awesome. Well, you have a wonderful day, and thank you again for being on our show. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. God bless you.